Shraddhavan and Savitri have met, and it is Shraddhavan who speaks first. In a very courtly way, as a well-educated prince, he very politely asks her name and where she has come from. But then he says that I wonder whether at all you are a human being or perhaps you are a goddess. And he says that he has some subtle vision. He has seen wonderful beings and sights and visions there in the forest. So there's something in him that thinks that she might be just one more of these visions. So he's been giving her examples of the things that he has seen. And this continues. I'll continue from line 50. I have heard strange voices cross the ether's waves. The centaur's wizard song has thrilled my ear. I have glimpsed the apsaras bathing in the pools. I have seen the wood nymphs peering through the leaves. The winds have shown to me their trampling lords. I have beheld the princes of the sun burning in 1,000-pillared homes of light. So now my mind could dream and my heart fear that from some wonder couch beyond our air, risen in a wide morning of the gods, thou drovest thy horses from the thunderer's worlds. Although to heaven thy beauty seems allied, much rather would my thoughts rejoice to know that mortal sweetness smiles between thy lids, and thy heart can beat beneath a human gaze, and thy aureate bosom quiver with a look, and its tumult answer to an earth-born voice. If our time-vexed affections thou canst feel, earth's ease of simple things can satisfy, if thy glance can dwell content on earthly soil, and this celestial summary of delight, thy golden body, dally with fatigue, oppressing with its grace our terrain, while the frail, sweet, passing taste of earthly food delays thee, and the torrent's leaping wine. Descend, let thy journey cease, come down to us. Close is my father's creepered hermitage, screened by the tall ranks of these silent kings, sung to by voices of the hue-robed choirs, whose chants repeat, transcribed in music's notes, the passionate colored lettering of the boughs, and fill the hours with their melodious cry. Amid the welcome hum of many bees, invade our honeyed kingdom of the woods. There let me lead thee into an opulent life. Bare, simple is the sylvan hermit life. Yet is it clad with the jewelry of earth. Wild winds run, visitors midst the swaying tops. Through the calm days, heaven's sentinels of peace, couched on a purple robe of sky above, look down on a rich secrecy and hush, and the chambered nuptial waters chant within. Enormous, whispering, many-formed around, high forest gods have taken in their arms the human hour, a guest of their centuried pomps. Apparelled are the morns in gold and green. Sunlight and shadow tapestry the walls to make a resting chamber fit for thee.
I have heard strange voices cross the waves, the centaur's wizard song has thrilled my ear. I have glimpsed the apsaras bathing in the pools, but I have seen the wood nymphs peering through the leaves. The winds have shown to me their trembling lords. I have beheld the princess of the sun burning in thousand pillared cones of light.
Thank you. I have heard strange voices cross the ether's waves. The centaur's wizard song has thrilled my ear. So these are things that he has heard with a subtle hearing. Strange voices cross the ether's waves. In the early days of radio, we used to think of the sound, the voices coming across the ether. Ether is the subtlest kind of atmosphere. And one of these strange voices he has heard is the voice of the centaur. A centaur is a being in Greek mythology. It has the body of a horse below the waist and the body of a man above the waist. And this symbolically seems to combine the vital forces and the mental forces. In Greek mythology, sometimes they are beneficent beings and sometimes not so beneficent. But there's one famous centaur, Chiron, who was the teacher, the guru of the Greek princes, in the same way that these Indian gurus gathered their disciples around them, and the kings would send their sons to study in the forests. In the same way, people, young princes, were sent to study with this particular centaur, Chiron. And he had a lyre, one of these Greek musical instruments. He would play and chant and sing on that. So it's probably that particular centaur that is referred to here. A symbolic being from the subtle planes. That wonderful, magical song, enchanting song, has thrilled my ear. And then he says he's glimpsed the apsaras. These are beings from the Indian mythology, the beautiful goddesses who serve Indra, the king of the gods, in his palace. They dance and entertain his guests and sing, beautiful beings. So he says, I have seen those beautiful goddesses bathing in the pools here in our forest. And I've seen the wood nymphs, the nymphs of the trees, peering through the leaves, as if they're hidden behind the leaves, but they open them and look out. And the winds have shown to me their trampling lords. So the rulers of the winds in the ancient Indian mythology are the Maruts. They are twin brothers, and they ride horses. They are masters of horses. These winds are their horses. This word trampling, that's what horses do with their hooves. M-A-R-U-T-S. That's why we have a Maruti car. It goes as fast as the wind. And then he says the princess of the sun. So there are many princes, noble beings who are in the sun, and he has seen them burning in 1,000-pillared homes of light. In the Indian temples, there are 1,000-pillared halls, vast halls with many, many pillars. Perhaps here he is thinking about the rays of the sun, that all of these are like pillars, and they're the spirits of the sun, or the emanations of the sun. He has had a vision of those beings. So he says, because I've seen and heard all these things here in the forest, then I could think that perhaps you are one of them. Dhanalakshmi.
So now my mind could dream and my heart fear that from some wonder couch beyond our air, risen in a wide morning of the gods, thou drawest thy horses from the thunderous worlds.
So because of all that, now my mind could dream, it could think, and my heart could fear that you are one of these beings, that this morning you rose, you got up from some wonderful couch beyond our air, in the subtle worlds. No? And you woke up in a wide morning of the gods, not in one of our human mornings, and that you're driving your horses and your chariot from the thunderer's worlds. So the thunderer is the god of the sky, Indra, who's the god of rain and thunder, or in the Greek mythology, Zeus with his thunderbolt. No? the king of the gods. So perhaps that's the palace that you've come from this morning, he says.
Although to heaven thy beauty seems alive, much rather would my thoughts rejoice to know that mortal sweetness smiles between thy lips, and thy heart can beat beneath a human gaze, and thy aureate bosom quiver with a look, and is to mild answer to an earth-born voice.
He says, you are so beautiful, you could be a being from heaven, although your beauty seems to belong to or be connected to heaven. I would be happier, much rather would my thoughts rejoice to know if I knew that you are a human being, that mortal sweetness smiles between thy lids. Thy lids, the eyelids, that you are looking at me with human eyes, and that your heart can respond to the gaze of another human being, that you can be touched by that. And he says that your aureate bosom, your golden breast, can quiver at the look, with my look, he means, and that there might be some disturbance there in response to an earthborn voice, the voice of a human being. He says, I would feel much happier to think that we could respond to each other in that way as two human beings instead of a human being to a goddess. Emily?
If our time-vexed affections thou canst feel, earth's ease of simple things can satisfy. If thy glance can dwell content on earthly soil, and this celestial summary of delight, thy golden body dally with fatigue, oppressing with its grace our terrain, while the frail, sweet, passing taste of earthly food delays thee, and the torrent's leaping wine, descend. Let thy journey cease, come down to us.
So this is an invitation to come down and take some refreshment. You see, in a very, very courtly way, he is speaking to her. No? So if you are human, if you can feel the kind of effects that we human beings can feel, we who are time-vexed, we're troubled by time, we can get hungry and thirsty and tired. If you can feel those affections, here it means be affected by those things, which can be satisfied by simple things of earth, the comfort that earth can give. And if you're a human being and your glance, your eyes can be happy to spend some time with your feet touching the earth on earthly soil. And if this celestial summary of delight, thy golden body, again he's marveling at her beauty. It seems to sum up all the delights of heaven. If that can play with, dally with fatigue, if it can feel tired, and if it can is willing to put its weight upon our terrain, on our ground, and if you will accept earthly food, it's frail and it's sweet and it's passing, but it has its attractions also, especially if you're a human being. If you would be willing to come down and take some food, and he offers her the torrent's leaping wine, pure water from the river. Then come down from your chariot. Let your journey cease, let it stop for a little while. Come down to us. Gangalakshmi.
Close is my father's creeper hermitage, screened by the tall ranks of this silent stream, sung to by voice of the yew-robed Schwarz.
Choirs, like Om choir.
Whose chant repeat, transcribe music's notes, the passionate prologue lettering of the
bows,
and fill the hours with their melodious cry.
Yes. So he's inviting her to come down, and he says that his father lives nearby. Close is the hermitage, that place where his father is living in the forest. And that hermitage, that little hut, is covered with creepers, flowering plants. And it's screened. You can't see it just now, that hermitage, because it's screened by the tall ranks of these silent kings, the kings of the forest, the great trees. They are screening from view that creepered hut, that little hut. And all around, these silent kings and the hermitage are being sung to, just like perhaps in a real court, in a real palace, there would be musicians playing beautiful music. Here he says there are the voices of the birds, the choirs. The choirs are a choir is when many people sing together. And the people who are singing in these choirs, they have colorful dresses. They are birds in their beautiful feathers. And he says their chants, the music, the singing that they are doing, is repeating the same song that is being expressed in color on the branches of the trees. And if you're familiar with music, you know that when we write a song or we write notes of music, there are lines, no? And on these, the notes are written. So he's evoking that the boughs are like the notes of music, and then the leaves, because he says letterings, no? The passionate colored letterings of the choirs. So the leaves are like the letters of this music. The sound of the bird song transcribes into music what is written there, and with the leaves on the boughs of the trees. So those choirs, those hue-robed choirs, are filling the hours with their melodious cry, their musical cry. Lovely image. Shiv. We'll let Shiv read, Lupa. Shiv at the back. Yeah?
Amid the welcome hum of many bees, invade our honey kingdom of the woods. Let me lead thee into an opulent life, bare, simple in the sylvan common life, yet is it glad with the jewelry of earth.
Yes. So he says that there'll be a welcoming sound to you. The hum of many bees. Where there are flowers, there will be bees, no? And that's a very pleasant sound in the summer, the sound of the bees. So he says, in the midst of this welcoming hum of the bees, please come into, he says, invade, come into our honeyed kingdom of the woods, as if the woods is the realm of honey, sweetness, delight. This is a nice poetic way of writing honeyed. We have this in English poetry. So here in the honeyed kingdom of the woods, let me lead you into an opulent life, a rich life. He says the sylvan hermit life, the life in the woods. Sylvan, this adjective means in the woods, is bare and simple, and yet it is clothed in. Clad means clothed with the jewelry of earth, all the bright, precious colors that earth has to offer. And then he gives an example of the opulence of this life in the forest.
Jewelry also a different spelling.
Jewelry? How would you spell it? Double L-E? Yeah. Yes, this is an alternative spelling. It's quite okay. Lyuba.
Wild wings run, visitors meets the swaying thoughts. Through the calm day's heavens, sentinels of peace, coach on a purple robe of skybound. Look down when you reach secrecy and hush, and the chambered nuptial waters chant the way.
So, one of the lovely things is when these wild winds run in the tops of the trees, in the canopy, they visit these swaying tops of the forest trees. The winds pass by. That makes a lovely sound and brings a coolness. And through the calm days, heaven's sentinels of peace. Sentinels are guardians, protective watchers, no? These sentinels of peace, they're protecting the peace of the forest. They are looking down from above. They are lying, actually, couched on a purple robe of sky, the intense color of the sky there above, and they are looking down on this rich secrecy and hush of the forest below. The silence, it's so enclosed, it's full of secrets. And below one can hear, it's one of the loveliest things in Indian forests, is to hear the running waters, the little streams running. So they are also singing. And he says they are chambered, they are enclosed in the enclosed spaces of the woods. And he says they are nuptial. It's as if they are singing at a marriage. Nuptials, it's a marriage. Do you like to read, sir?
Enormous whispering, many formed around, high forest gods are taken in their arms. The human are a guest of the century homes.
You can read the next 3 lines also.
Apparelled are the moons in cold green, sunlight and shadow tapestry the walls, to make a resting chamber fit for thee.
Yes. So he says, all around us there are enormous, very, very big, whispering quietly, whispering among themselves, high forest gods, great spirits, protective, inhabiting spirits of the forest. And they take many different forms. The many different forms of the trees. There must be rocks. Perhaps they are in some of the animals. They have embraced the human hour. There are a few human beings living there, experiencing time in the way that only human beings can. No? These high forest gods have taken them, the humans, into their midst as a guest of their centuried pomps. Pomps is their show, their magnificence. No? And that has, the trees live so long, for hundreds of years. No? The human hour is very small and impermanent compared with their centuried pomps. And they accept the human beings in as guests. And in this forest world, the mornings are dressed, apparelled, it means dressed, in green and gold, beautiful colors of green and gold. And the walls of this palace have beautiful tapestries, like a king's palace will have beautiful woven pictures, colorful pictures on the walls. Here the tapestries are made by the play of sunlight and shadow on the colors of the trees. No? And all this makes a nice room, a nice private room, a chamber where you can rest. So this is his invitation to her. Joel, we can read a little further.
A while she paused, as if hearing still his voice, unwilling to break the charm, then slowly spoke. Musing, she answered, I am Savitri, princess of Madra. Who are you? What name musical on earth expresses thee to men? What trunk of kings, watered by fortunate streams, has flowered at last upon one happy branch?
Thank you. So she doesn't speak immediately. She waits a while. She paused before answering, as if she's still hearing his voice, and as if she's unwilling to break the charm of hearing that voice. But then after a minute, slowly she speaks in a thoughtful, musing sort of way, and she tells him, I am Savitri, princess of Madra. Madra is the name of the kingdom that is ruled by her father. And then she asks, who are you? What name musical on earth expresses thee to men? It's also a very nice way of saying things, no? Your name must surely be a musical, beautiful name, and it's the name that you have on earth by which human beings know you. No? Doesn't mean that it's your soul name, but what is that name? And then she wants to know about his family. She says, you must be a prince. You must belong to a royal family. Important families, they maintain a record of their family tree. No? And that family tree will have many branches of the family. No? So she says there must be one blessed trunk, the main part of the tree, watered by fortunate streams. Good fortune must have smiled on this family tree, and you are a flower of it, has flowered at last upon one happy branch, one branch of that family. So she's asking about his family. And then she asks something else. Do you like to read?
Why is thy dwelling in the pathless wood, far from these thy glorious due demands? Haunt of anthrites and earth's wilder views, where only with thy witness self thou roams, in nature's mean and human loneliness, surrounded by enormous silences and the blind murmur of primeval calms.
So why are you living here in the wood, the pathless wood? Obviously nobody comes here. And here you are in all the glory of your youth, and normally a prince at your age will be doing great deeds, heroic deeds, but here you're very far away from all this active life. Here you are living in this pathless wood, haunt of the anchorites. Anchorites are hermits, and particularly sannyasis, people who've renounced the world, who come away from it. And earth's wilder broods, the birds and the animals. A brood is a family, so the wilder species. And you're roaming here, thou roamst, you are wandering here, all alone, with thy witness self. Obviously you have some conscious witness within, observing all this, in this unhuman loneliness, away from the world of men, in nature's green, unhuman loneliness. You're surrounded by these vast silences and this murmur, this blind murmur, unconscious murmur of primeval calms. Something that's primeval, it has remained unchanged since the very beginning of time. Primeval. Mahalingam.
And Shraddhavan replied to Savitri, in days when yet his life looked clear and light, King Bhimasena, once the Shalva, reigned through all the tracts which from behind these tops, passing his days of eternal delight, and trusting converse with the traveller winds, turns looking back towards the southern heavens and gains his flank upon the nation hills.
So he starts to tell the story, and he starts telling about King Dyumatsena, who in days when yet his sight looked clear on life, King Dyumatsena has become blind. But before he was blind, he ruled as the Shalva, the king of the Shalva kingdom. And that kingdom stretches behind these tops. He must be pointing to the hills behind him. Beyond those, it spreads out, the kingdom of Shalva. He says there, it's also a green country, passes its days of emerald delight in trusting converse with the traveller winds. The winds must pass through that valley on the other side of the hills, and it's facing south. It turns looking back towards the southern heavens and leans its flank. It takes in part, your flank is your side, so it's as if the land is reclining, leaning against the hills. But now where they are, they're on the other side of those same hills. He used to rule the country which is on the other side of the hills where they are now. So what happened?
Because
Heaven's brilliant gods recalled their terrorist gifts, took from blank eyes their glad and autumnal ray, and read the uncertain godliness from his side.
Yes. So, fate, the goddess of fate, she is equal. She doesn't care more about one person or another. No. She treats everybody somehow impartially, we can say. So she was protecting him as the king of the Shalva, but then she removed her protection, and a living night enclosed the strong man's paths. He becomes blind. The brilliant gods of heaven recalled, took back the gifts they have given to him, carelessly, casually. And they took from those blank eyes of his that glad and helping ray, the power of vision, and led the uncertain goddess, fortune, good fortune. They took her away from his side. Sergei, you will read.
Outcast from empire of the outer light, lost to the comradeship of seeing men, he sojourns into solitudes within and in the solemn rustle of the woods.
Yes. So he's been outcast, cast out, sent out from the empire of the outer light. He doesn't see the light anymore. And now that King Dumatsena, is sojourning, is living in two solitudes. He's alone inside himself, and he's here in this outer solitude of the forests, in the solemn rustle, the sound of the woods. He's been exiled, or he's taken exile into the forest. Lost to the comradeship of seeing men. He's, in that sense also, he's an outcast. He's been sent away from his kingdom. This, I suppose it is in many early cultures, no, that in order to be the ruler, you had to be perfect. And if you were blind, you couldn't rule because... But, of course, Sri Aurobindo gives a symbolic significance to this blindness. He says that the name of King Dumatsena indicates that he's symbol of the mind as it should be. Dumatsena, it means an army of light. That's the divine mind. But here, in our state of ignorance, the mind has fallen blind. And when it's fallen blind and it's living in ignorance, it loses its mastery. It loses its mastery over itself, its self-knowledge, and its power to rule. So this is through the work of Savitri, Dumatsena, the mind, the human mind, gets back its power to rule. Its sight, its power of vision, and its power of action. You like to read? Yes?
Son of that king, I, Shraddhavan, have lived, contented for naught of thee aware, in my high peopled lowliness of spirit, and this huge vital murmur kin to me, nursed by the vastness, pupil of solitude.
So he says, I'm the son of that king who's became blind. I'm Shraddhavan. And I have lived here in the forest contented because I was not yet aware of you. I've been living here in this loneliness of spirit, and yet it seemed to be high-peopled. There were high beings and powers in that loneliness. And this huge vital murmur, this murmur of life in the forest, which was very close to me, kin to me. I've been nursed by this vastness. I've been the student, the pupil of this solitude, of this loneliness. I think I would like to stop there because then he tells all about his education in the woods. Yes. I have heard strange voices cross the ether's waves. The centaur's wizard song has thrilled my ear. I have glimpsed the apsaras bathing in the pools. I have seen the wood nymphs peering through the leaves. The winds have shown to me their trampling lords. I have beheld the princes of the sun burning in thousand-pillared homes of light. So now my mind could dream, and my heart fear, that from some wonder couch beyond our air, risen in a wide morning of the gods, thou drovest thy horses from the thunderer's worlds. Although to heaven thy beauty seems allied, much rather would my thoughts rejoice to know that mortal sweetness smiles between thy lids, and thy heart can beat beneath a human gaze, and thy aureate bosom quiver with a look, and its tumult answer to an earth-born voice. If our time-vexed affections thou canst feel, earth's ease of simple things can satisfy, if thy glance can dwell content on earthly soil, and this celestial summary of delight, thy golden body, dally with fatigue, oppressing with its grace our terrain, while the frail, sweet, passing taste of earthly food delays thee, and the torrent's leaping wine. Descend, let thy journey cease, come down to us. Close is my father's creepered hermitage, screened by the tall ranks of these silent kings, sung to by voices of the hue-robed choirs, whose chants repeat, transcribed in music's notes, the passionate coloured lettering of the boughs, and fill the hours with their melodious cry. Amid the welcome hum of many bees, invade our honeyed kingdom of the woods. There let me lead thee into an opulent life. Bare, simple is the sylvan hermit life, yet is it clad with the jewelry of earth. Wild winds run, visitors midst the swaying tops. Through the calm days, heaven's sentinels of peace, couched on a purple robe of sky above, look down on a rich secrecy and hush, and the chambered nuptial waters chant within. Enormous, whispering, many-formed around, high forest gods have taken in their arms the human hour, a guest of their centuried pomps. Apparelled are the morns in gold and green, sunlight and shadow tapestry the walls, to make a resting chamber fit for thee. A while she paused, as if hearing still his voice, unwilling to break the charm. Then slowly spoke. Musing, she answered, I am Savitri, Princess of Madra. Who art thou? What name musical on earth expresses thee to men? What trunk of kings, watered by fortunate streams, has flowered at last upon one happy branch? Why is thy dwelling in the pathless wood, far from the deeds thy glorious youth demands, haunt of the anchorites and earth's wilder broods, where only with thy witness self thou roam'st in nature's green, unhuman loneliness, surrounded by enormous silences and the blind murmur of primeval calms. And Shraddhavan replied to Savitri, in days when yet his sight looked clear on life, King Dyumatsena once, the Shalwa, reigned through all the tract which from behind these tops, passing its days of emerald delight in trusting converse with the traveller winds, turns, looking back towards the southern heavens, and leans its flank upon the musing hills. But equal fate removed her covering hand. A living night enclosed the strong man's paths. Heaven's brilliant gods recalled their careless gifts, took from blank eyes their glad and helping ray, and led the uncertain goddess from his side. Outcast from empire of the outer light, lost to the comradeship of seeing men, he sojourns in two solitudes, within and in the solemn rustle of the woods. Son of that king, I, Shraddhavan, have lived contented, for not yet of thee aware, in my high-peopled loneliness of spirit, and this huge vital murmur kin to me, nursed by the vastness, pupil of solitude,